I'd been married to Emma for over 12 years. Our story started simply enough. We were college sweethearts who shared a love for music and adventure. We spent those early years traveling together, exploring cities and small towns, always searching for the next place, the next new memory. Our marriage, in its early days, felt solid, indestructible. Emma was my best friend, the person who knew me better than anyone else. But somewhere along the way, life got complicated. We bought a house, settled into careers, and had our 2 kids, Lily and Ethan. The spontaneity that once defined us slowly faded, replaced by the steady rhythm of bills, school schedules, and work commitments. We became like so many other couples we used to laugh about in our younger days, 2 people caught up in the humdrum of life, drifting further apart with each passing day. Looking back, I can see now that the warning signs were there. Emma was always distracted, her eyes glued to her phone more often than not, and she'd developed a habit of spending long hours at work or with her noon friends from yoga. At first, I didn't think much of it. I trusted her. But over time, the distance between us grew, leaving me with a nagging feeling I couldn't shake. One evening, after another long day, I found myself lying awake, my mind racing with doubts. Emma was next to me, already asleep, her breathing slow and steady. I watched her for a moment, wondering if I was overthinking everything. Maybe she was just tired from work, just caught up in the demands of life. But there was something in the way she'd been acting, something in her smile that didn't feel familiar anymore. The next morning, as she prepared to leave for another late meeting, I felt a strange impulse to follow her. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I had no reason to doubt her. But the doubt was there, whispering in the back of my mind, urging me to find out the truth. As she walked out the door, I grabbed my keys and jacket, waiting a few minutes before following her down the street. She drove across town, turning into a quiet neighborhood I didn't recognize. I parked a few cars away, watching as she stepped out of her car and entered a small cafe. I waited, my heart pounding in my chest. Moments later, a man joined her, greeting her with a hug that lingered a second too long. I watched as they took a table by the window, their faces lit with smiles I hadn't seen from her in years. They looked comfortable together, at ease in a way that felt too intimate. That night, Emma came home, slipping back into her routine as if nothing had happened. She greeted the kids, helped with homework, and sat down to dinner with the same calm smile. But I couldn't stop replaying what I'd seen. The way she'd looked at him, the way they'd laughed together, it was the look she used to give me. I didn't confront her that night. Part of me wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation, that maybe he was just a friend. But another part of me knew that this wasn't a misunderstanding. Something had changed, something I couldn't ignore. Over the next few weeks, I kept my suspicions to myself, watching for any signs that might confirm or dispel my fears. Emma continued her routine, always busy, always on the go. Her phone became her constant companion, and she'd grown more secretive, her screen angled away whenever I was nearby. One evening, as she sat on the couch scrolling through her messages, I noticed a familiar name flash across her screen: Jason. I felt a surge of anger, mixed with a sickening sense of betrayal. Jason was a man I'd heard about only once, a noon friend she'd met at a yoga retreat months ago. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it, chalking it up to harmless small talk. But now, the pieces began to fit together, painting a picture I didn't want to see. The next day, I found myself doing something I'd never thought I'd do. While Emma was out with the kids, I took her phone from her nightstand and scrolled through her messages. My hands shook as I read each word, each line confirming my worst fears. Jason, can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing. Emma, I know. I've been thinking about it all day. Jason, next week, same place? Emma, yes. I'll make an excuse to stay late at work. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just a fling, it was something deeper, something that had been going on for months behind my back. I felt a wave of nausea, a sickening realization that the woman I loved, the mother of my children, had been lying to me all along. That night I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how things had gotten to this point. I thought of all the moments we'd shared, the life we'd built together, and wondered if any of it had been real. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, leaving me feeling hollow, broken. I knew I had to confront her, to ask her why she'd done this, but I didn't know if I could handle the answer. A part of me wanted to leave, to walk away and never look back. But another part of me needed closure, needed to understand why she'd chosen to destroy everything we'd built. The following morning, after the kids had left for school, I found Emma in the kitchen, preparing her coffee as if it were any other day. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and walked over to her, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and sadness. "Emma," I began, my voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk." She looked up, surprised by the seriousness in my tone. "Sure, what's on your mind?" I met her gaze, feeling a surge of anger and hurt. "I know about Jason." For a moment, she looked genuinely shocked, as if she hadn't expected me to find out. But then her expression shifted, her face hardening as she set down her mug, her eyes unreadable. "How long has it been going on?" I asked, my voice shaking. "How long have you been lying to me?" She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "No, I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did." I clenched my fists, feeling the weight of her words settle over me. "That's not an answer, Emma. I deserve to know the truth." She took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping as she finally looked up at me. "It's been a few months. I never planned for it to go this far, but I felt trapped, disconnected. I didn't know how to talk to you about it." Her words felt hollow, like a weak excuse, a justification for a choice that had shattered our lives. I wanted to scream, to make her understand the depth of the pain she'd caused. But I knew that nothing she could say would ever make it right. "So what now?" I asked, my voice cold. "Do you want to be with him? Are you leaving us for him?" She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "No, I don't want to leave. I never wanted this to happen, and I don't know how to fix it." "I'm sorry." Her apology felt like a slap in the face, a reminder of everything we'd lost. I looked at her, the woman I'd once loved, and realized that there was no going back. The trust, the foundation of everything we'd built, had been destroyed, and I didn't know if I could ever forgive her. The days following my confrontation with Emma felt like a blur. I was living in a state of numbness, moving through the motions without feeling anything at all. Each morning I'd get up, help the kids get ready for school, go to work, and come back home to a house that no longer felt like mine. Emma and I barely spoke, each of us trying to avoid the other as much as possible. Our kids, Lily and Ethan, sensed the tension immediately. They asked questions, their young eyes full of concern as they noticed the silence that had settled between us. I did my best to reassure them, to keep things as normal as possible, but it was clear that they knew something was wrong. They were too perceptive to miss the fact that their parents were no longer on speaking terms. One evening, after I'd put the kids to bed, Emma approached me in the living room. She looked tired, worn out in a way that I hadn't seen before. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her, but then the memory of her messages with Jason, the way she'd looked at him, came rushing back, and the sympathy vanished. "We need to talk," she said, her voice soft, almost pleading. I nodded, feeling a wave of resentment rise within me. "Go ahead." She took a deep breath, sitting down across from me, her hands nervously twisting in her lap. "Noah, I know I've hurt you. I know I've broken your trust, and I can't change that. But I want to try. I want to try to fix this, if you'll let me." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a surge of anger mixed with disbelief. How could she think that this was something we could fix? That trust, that sense of security, it was gone, shattered by her choices. "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" I asked, my tone cold. "How do you plan to fix the fact that you've been lying to me for months? That you've been seeing another man while I've been here, raising our children, building a life that clearly didn't mean as much to you?" She looked down, her face etched with guilt. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, Noah. I know that. But I can't just walk away from this, from you and the kids. I want to make things right. I'll go to therapy, I'll do whatever it takes. Just give me a chance to prove that I'm sorry." I stared at her, the woman I'd once loved, now reduced to a stranger begging for forgiveness. Part of me wanted to believe her, to give her that chance, if only for the sake of our children. But another part of me, the part that had spent sleepless nights replaying her betrayal, knew that forgiveness wasn't something I could offer easily. "I need time," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again, but I need time to figure out what I want." She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I understand. Take all the time you need." The following weeks were a delicate balance of avoidance and awkward attempts at communication. Emma moved into the guest room, and we settled into a tense, strained coexistence. She signed up for therapy, attending weekly sessions, and even suggested we go to counseling together. But I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I'd ever be ready to sit in a room with her and talk about fixing something that felt irreparably broken. Instead, I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the distractions it offered. I started staying late at the office, taking on extra projects, anything to keep myself busy and away from the house. When I wasn't working, I spent as much time as possible with the kids, taking them to the park, organizing movie nights, anything to bring them some sense of normalcy. One evening, as I was putting Ethan to bed, he looked up at me, his small face full of confusion. "Dad, are you mad at Mom?" he asked, his voice soft. I hesitated, feeling a lump form in my throat. "No, buddy. I'm not mad, we're just going through a tough time." He nodded, but I could see the worry in his eyes. "Will it get better?" I didn't have an answer. All I could do was hope that one day, it would, though maybe not in the way he expected. It was around this time that I began considering divorce. The idea had crossed my mind countless times, but now, it felt less like an abstract possibility and more like an inevitable conclusion. I'd done my best to push through the pain, to keep things together for the kids, but the truth was that I couldn't see a way forward. The foundation of our marriage was gone, and I couldn't ignore that. I began researching lawyers, looking into the process of filing for divorce, what it would mean for the kids, for our finances. It was a painful, sobering reality, one that I'd never imagined facing. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this might be the only way to truly move on, to start fresh. One evening, I sat down with Emma, determined to finally have the conversation I'd been dreading. "I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice steady. "I've tried, Emma. I've tried to move past what you did, but I can't. Every time I look at you, I see what we lost, what you took from us." She looked up at me, her eyes filling with tears. "Noah, please. I know I made a terrible mistake, but can't we try? For the kids." I shook my head, feeling the weight of my decision settle over me. "This isn't just about the kids. This is about us, about the fact that I can't trust you anymore. We can't rebuild something that's been destroyed." She sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," I replied, my voice breaking. "And now we have to live with that." The next few weeks were filled with painful, necessary steps. We began the process of separating our finances, dividing assets, making arrangements for custody. We agreed to share custody of Lily and Ethan, wanting to give them as much stability as possible amidst the chaos. It was a painful, grueling process, each decision a reminder of the life we'd once shared, now reduced to legal terms and paperwork. Telling the kids was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. We sat them down together, explaining that we were going to be living in different houses, that things would be different, but that they'd still have both of us in their lives. Lily, being older, took it harder. She cried, asking questions we didn't have answers for, questions about why we couldn't work things out, why we couldn't be a family anymore. Ethan was quieter, his young mind struggling to process what was happening. Watching their reactions, seeing the hurt in their eyes, was a pain unlike any I'd ever known. I wanted to protect them, to shield them from the heartache we were going through, but there was no way to soften the reality. Over the following months, we settled into a new routine. Emma moved into a small apartment nearby, and the kids began splitting their time between our homes. The arrangement was awkward at first, filled with moments of tension and unspoken resentment. But gradually, we found a rhythm, a way to coexist for the sake of our children. For the first time, I began to feel a sense of peace. It wasn't easy, and there were still days when the pain felt fresh, when the memories of what we'd lost haunted me. But I was learning to live with it, to accept the reality of my new life. I found comfort in small things, the laughter of my children, the quiet of my own space, the freedom to make choices for myself. I reconnected with old friends, started focusing on my health, and even began pursuing hobbies I'd abandoned years ago. There was a sense of renewal in these small acts, a reminder that life could go on, that happiness was still possible. One evening, as I watched the kids playing in the backyard, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness for the life we'd lost, but also gratitude for the strength I'd found in its wake. The betrayal, the heartache, it was all part of my story now, a painful chapter that had taught me more than I'd ever wanted to know. But as I watched Lily and Ethan laugh, their faces lit with joy, I realized that I was moving forward, one step at a time. I wasn't the same person I'd been before, but I was stronger, more resilient. And for the first time, I felt a sense of hope, a belief that I could create a new life, a new future, not defined by the past, but by the possibilities that lay ahead. Months passed since Emma and I signed the final papers, and in that time, I began to see life through a different lens. The once painful silence of an empty home transformed into a source of comfort, a quiet reminder that I was finally free to shape my own future. There were no more whispered phone calls, no more secrets, just me, my kids, and the promise of a new life. The kids adjusted faster than I'd expected. Our new routines became second nature, and as much as it hurt to see them split between two homes, I could tell that they were slowly finding peace in the change. Lily, my older one, occasionally asked questions, her innocent eyes still looking for reasons I couldn't quite explain. But Ethan, young enough to adapt without too much questioning, seemed content, especially with the extra attention I was able to give him now. One weekend, as the kids stayed with Emma, I found myself alone in the house, surrounded by echoes of the past. I spent that weekend clearing out old photos, boxing up memories that no longer held the same meaning. I kept a few for the kids, but most of them went into storage, reminders of a life I was ready to leave behind. In the evenings, I sat by the window, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, it had all shaped me, forced me to confront parts of myself I'd been ignoring for years. I'd learned that healing wasn't about forgetting or pretending that things never happened. It was about accepting the scars, learning from them, and finding strength in the resilience they built within me. That weekend marked a turning point. For the first time, I felt a genuine sense of closure, a release from the anger and resentment that had been eating away at me. I was ready to move forward, to rebuild, to create a life that felt true to who I was. Over the next few months, I took small steps towards a fresh start. I began reconnecting with friends I hadn't seen in years, catching up over coffee, going to old favorite spots around town. These friends, who'd been distant through the turbulence of marriage and children, welcomed me back without hesitation, offering support and warmth when I needed it most. I also started exploring new hobbies, things I'd set aside in the early years of our marriage. I signed up for a photography class, something I'd always wanted to do, and found joy in capturing simple, everyday moments that once felt insignificant. There was something incredibly grounding in this, seeing life through a new lens, appreciating the beauty in small, quiet moments. Through these small acts of rediscovery, I began to feel more whole, more present. The life I was building was modest, simple, but it was mine. And with each passing day, the pain of the past faded, replaced by a sense of pride in the progress I was making. Then, one Saturday, while out with the kids at a nearby park, I ran into an old friend from college, Kate. We'd been close years ago, sharing late nights studying and debating life's big questions. She'd moved back to town recently, and as we caught up, it was like no time had passed at all. Kate had always been warm, genuine, and seeing her now, with that same familiar spark in her eyes, was a comfort I hadn't realized I'd missed. We talked for hours, watching the kids play, sharing stories about life's twists and turns. She, too, had gone through her own challenges, and there was an unspoken understanding between us, a bond forged through shared experiences. As the afternoon turned into evening, Kate mentioned wanting to organize a reunion with some of our old friends, a chance to reconnect and remember simpler times. I agreed, feeling a sense of excitement that I hadn't felt in years. It was refreshing to think about reconnecting, about sharing laughter without the weight of the past hanging over me. In the weeks that followed, Kate and I grew closer. We began spending more time together, meeting up with the kids, catching up over coffee, and sharing stories about the challenges and triumphs we'd faced over the years. There was no rush, no pressure to define anything. It was simply a friendship, a connection that felt genuine, easy. Through her, I started to see myself in a new light. I realized that I was no longer the person defined by the past, by the pain of betrayal. I was a father, a friend, a man rebuilding his life with purpose and hope. And slowly, I began to open myself to the possibility of new beginnings. One evening, as Kate and I sat by the lake watching the sunset, she turned to me, her expression serious yet kind. "Noah," she began, "I want you to know that whatever happens, I'm grateful for this, for the chance to reconnect, to see you finding yourself again. It's inspiring." Her words struck a chord within me. It was a simple statement, but it encapsulated everything I'd been working towards. I wasn't searching for someone to fill the void left by Emma. I was searching for myself, for the strength and joy I'd once had, and in reconnecting with Kate, I was reminded of the person I'd always been beneath the scars. I looked at her, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thank you, Kate. I didn't realize how much I needed this, just to feel like myself again." She smiled, and for a moment, we sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun dip below the horizon. In that moment, I felt a sense of peace, a quiet assurance that life was moving in the right direction. As time went on, my relationship with Kate grew, but it was slow and steady, grounded in mutual respect and understanding. We weren't rushing into anything, we were simply enjoying each other's company, sharing the journey of healing and self-discovery. For the first time since my marriage ended, I felt a genuine sense of happiness, a belief that life could be good again, that I could be whole. My past would always be a part of me, but it no longer defined me. I had found a way to move forward, to build a future not overshadowed by betrayal but illuminated by resilience. And as I looked at my life, my children, my friends, and this new chapter with Kate, I realized that I was exactly where I needed to be. I'd faced the pain, the heartache, and I'd come out stronger, more grounded, more grateful. The journey wasn't easy, but it was mine, and that was enough. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for watching my videos, sharing them, and supporting me along the way. Your views, comments, and likes are the driving force behind my passion to create captivating and unexpected stories. Every tale I share is more than just a plot. It's a journey of emotions, lessons, and reflections that we experience together. Your engagement brings life and soul to this channel. Thank you for sticking with me until the very end of each video because the finale of every story is where the real impact lies. I promise to continue delivering twists and turns that surprise, inspire, and resonate with your hearts.